Hello and welcome to Faithfully Stampin' with Jennifer Helm. I am an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up, and today is a card in my Mystery Monday series. It is a simple card technique, but a very pretty one. Every Monday I do a video live on my Facebook page where I post a supply list earlier in the day, but I don't show the card until we go live with the video. And this is one of these cards. And this is a very simple technique using a punch. And if you don't have any punches, don't panic. Don't turn me off right now. Stick with me because you do have options. This is the Rectangular Postage Stamp Punch that I will be using. It's one of our lock punches. And you'll see me use this live in action in just a minute. But you don't have to use this particular punch. You could experiment with different size punches if you have them at home. Or if you're thinking, well, I don't have any punches at all, that's okay too. All you need are rectangles that are just about 2 inches by 1 3/8 of an inch if you want a similar size to this, or you can make them bigger and experiment with size. So here's what we're going to do to make this card. It's very quick and easy. The first thing you will need is a piece of cardstock that is 8.5 by 5.5, scored on the 8.5 inch side at 4 1/4. And this serves as your card base. You can go ahead and fold it in half. This is Purple Posy. This is one of the retiring in colors for Stampin' Up. We will have 5 new colors coming out very soon in May. If you would like to see a catalog, please feel free to visit my website. And if you'd like a paper catalog, please feel free to get in touch with me. And if you're not working with another demonstrator, I'd be happy to send you one. So we've got our card base. I'm going to bring over my postage stamp punch. And I'm going to use designer series paper and embossed cardstock. So to start, I have a small piece of designer series paper. This is part of the Hydrangea Haven suite in our new January to June catalog. And I'm just going to punch 2 of the postage stamps here. And since I don't quite have enough paper, I'm going to pull over another sheet. Some of our designer series paper is 12 by 12 and some is 6 by 6. This is some of the 12 by 12. So I'm just going to punch 2 more of the rectangle postage stamps out of that because I want to use the back side as well. So 2 more punches out of the designer series paper. And then I'm keeping with the purples here. So I've got my hydrangea paper, my purple posy, I have gorgeous grape, and this is a piece that I ran through our ornate floral embossing folder, so it's got the raised design on it. And I'm just going to punch 2 of the postage stamps here. And then I will punch 1 more for our sentiment when I am ready to stamp, and I'll show you that in just a few minutes. So what I like to do when I assemble this card is, it's very fussy to try to lay things on my card front and have it stay there because my card likes to hop up in the air. So I flip my cardstock open and I'm going to lay my punches in the pattern I want before I start gluing anything down. And so I tend to go with the more solid side of my paper to start in the vertical position, kind of centered, and then my pattern next to it horizontally lined up. And then I switch them, scoot this up just a little bit, and offset them like so. Now, when you are finishing this card, you're going to be covering the center of where the squares all meet. So keep that in mind. You might want to flip your paper around if there's a certain piece of the paper that you want to show more on the corners. And then last but not least, I'm going to take my embossed rectangles and lay them here on the sides. And they are going to hang off, but we're going to trim them. But what I like to do is get my layout set before I start doing any of the gluing. And since I'm relatively happy with this design, I'm just going to pick up 1 of my pieces and put some adhesive on the back. This is our Stampin' Seal Plus. It is my favorite adhesive. We have Stampin' Seal and Stampin' Seal Plus. And the Stampin' Seal Plus is segmented pieces, and it's great for 3D projects in addition to cards. So I've just made it my go-to, but I could definitely use the Stampin' Seal Plus, or Stampin' Seal, excuse me, for this as well. So once I get the top two in place, I usually move my embossed pieces to the side, and then I just have more of a reference point for my design. And you can experiment with your spacing. I'll show you on one of the samples. You might not want to talk while you work, or you'll put glue on the wrong side of your paper like I nearly did. So here we go. So for this layout, I like to keep them kind of centered, but as I said, you can experiment with positioning. Now for these pieces that are going to hang over the edge, I'm mostly going to keep the glue to one side, but I am going to make sure I go enough towards the edges that the end isn't loose once I cut it off. So hopefully that makes sense the way I explained that. And when you're positioning these, you can keep them right in line, or you can move them around a little bit, up to you. I'm going to keep these in line because I want to add some pearls for accents, embellishments when I'm finished. And this was a technique I saw a picture that another demonstrator had put together and just decided to try it. It looked like a simple design that was lots of fun. So there is my card front, just about complete already. So as I said, quick and easy. I'm going to flip the card open and take some scissors, and all I'm going to do is trim right along the edge and remove these pieces that are hanging over. And then my card front is almost ready to go. Now I mentioned I was going to stamp one more piece of cardstock, so I have some Highland Heather. You can see I've got the purple theme going on, and some gorgeous grape ink. I have a sentiment for the front of the card and the inside of the card. These are both red rubber stamps. If you're new to stamping, there's two different kinds of stamps that we have. We have the red rubber and the photopolymer. The photopolymer is clear and it doesn't have a cushion, so you need to put a little cushion under your project when you're stamping, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. But these red rubber stamps, if you can see, have a foam layer built right in, so they have a little cushion and a little give. So I don't need a mat under these. I'm going to take my gorgeous grape ink and ink up my stamp, and I always make sure that I have enough ink, and then stamp on the cardstock. And this is a dye-based ink. It dries very quickly, which is one of the things I love most about it. So that was just a quick second, it's already dry. So now I'm going to take my punch, and let's see, I'm just going to trim a smidge of cardstock off here so that I can get a little closer. I prefer to stamp first and then punch because that way I can center. Sometimes I'm brave and I do it the other way around. It's totally up to you. Before I close my ink pad, I'm going to stamp the sentiment on the inside. The happy birthday is from our By the Dock stamp set, and this one that says wishing you your best year yet is from our best year stamp set. So there's my sentiment for the inside. And now I don't like to have plain envelopes. I like to give my envelopes a little pizzazz. So I'm going to stamp on them. Excuse me. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, I'm using a photopolymer stamp for this one. So I need my Stampin' Pierce mat. It's just a piece of foam. Even a catalog would do, to give yourself a little cushion underneath. So a quick accent on the envelope corner, and I think I'll come back and add a little accent to the bottom corner of the card as well. And that's all my stamping. So there is not a lot, excuse me, nothing like a tickle live on camera. Not a lot of stamping or construction to this particular card. So to finish up, I'm going to take the sentiment that I just stamped and pop it on the front of the card with dimensionals. These are little foam dots that Stampin' Up! Has in 2 sizes. So I'm going to place 2 of the larger ones on the back here. And then this piece gets put right in the middle of the card. And you can experiment. You do not have to repeat the same shape. You can use different size pieces for your central piece there. I'll show you that in a sample in just a minute. So now I'm going to take your pick tool. This is a great gadget that Stampin' Up! Has. It has a putty end on one end, and it also comes with a couple other interchangeable pieces. They just unlock and come right out of the take your pick tool. There's a spatula that's great for lifting embellishments, and then we have our piercing end, which is great for paper piercing or helping with embellishments as well. So I have some pastel pearls that coordinate very nicely with the set, and I'm just going to slide them right out of my packaging here. And I just want to put a few on the corners in the empty spaces. And I like to take my take your pick tool, either the spatula end or this pierced end, to help me. Sometimes my fingernails don't want to cooperate and I end up flinging my pearls or my rhinestones across the room, which always makes for an interesting day. You can find them anywhere. So I'm going to use a couple of these darker ones here, and then I'm going to accent with a couple of the lighter purple as well. There's 4 different shades of these pearls, and they're all beautiful. These are one of my favorite embellishments from our new catalog. So you could obviously position these wherever you wanted, and you don't even have to have the bling if you don't want. There we go. And there we have a sweet, simple little card that you can make for any occasion just by changing up your designer series paper. So I will show you a few more samples that I have. I mentioned different placements with this technique. For example, the very first time I went to put this card together, I left more spacing, and I realized as I was putting the card together that it was perfectly lovely, but I didn't like how the pearls were going to look with the bigger spacing. So I shifted to less of a gap between the pieces, but the layout is the same. And they both look perfectly lovely. So you have options. And of course, you can do this with any kind of paper. This is paper from our ice cream corner suite. For this one, instead of stamping the envelope, I coordinated by putting a strip of designer series paper on my envelope flap. And I made use of the paper by punching the popsicles out. And I decided to do something fun with this one and included a strip of the designer series paper as well as another postage stamp inside. So that's kind of a little surprise. And then here is another card with the same layout. And as I said, you can use different pieces on the front. You're not obligated to use the same shape. And so this is obviously a birthday card. And there's my little flower on the inside of the card and on the envelope as well. And I wanted to show you, you can change up your look very easily by changing up a little bit of the layout. I use the same colors and the same designer series paper here with the floral print from our Fine Art Floral Suite. But I changed the layout. Instead of a different arrangement, I simply used 4 of the rectangle postage stamps. And I used 2 in the designer series paper and then 2 in the embossed cardstock. And so for this card, I simply added the touch of yellow, a very different look using very similar cardstock pieces and the same punch. So you definitely have options, lots of room for experimenting. Here is another card that I used, the 4 square look. And for this one, after I glued the 4 postage stamps to my top layer of designer series paper, I ran it through my embossing machine. It's the Seabed embossing folder. So hopefully you can see the raised design here. It just gives another look of dimension to the card. And then I backed it with the Misty Moonlight cardstock and put it on the Seaside spray base. Added my sentiment and some of the little stickers that coordinate with the Sand and Sea Suite. And you can change the look of your card simply by changing the orientation. This is an example where I used the 4-square technique and just changed the layout of the card. And you can very much change up the look of your card just by changing the designer series paper and the color scheme. These are going to be graduation cards. So very simple. These took no time at all to assemble. Lots of fun cards with lots of many different looks. So I hope you enjoyed this quick and simple card technique. I hope you would think about subscribing to this YouTube channel so you can come back and watch future videos with me. Thank you so much for crafting with me. I'm Jennifer Helm, the Faithful Stamper. Take care and happy crafting.